Well, folks, good morning, good evening, good day, whatever time that you are listening to this video, you're welcome. This is your teacher, Mr. Matleviani again, and today we'll be looking at the exam revision for question 1, grade 11. But before we can actually hop into it, please, if you're new to my channel, subscribe, like, and share this video with your beloved ones at home. This will actually come handy for the examination. Right, now without any further ado, or without wasting any more time, let's hop into it. Question 1 will always be divided into subsections. This is the format that it will actually take every time. You see. So now it means you'll actually have a question that deals with solve for x. You will have a question that deals with simultaneous equation. You also have. So let's look at it into pieces. Like for an example, if you check the first one, there will always be a question that will actually need you to directly factorize. It means in this case, there's no need for you to be using the quadratic formula or to be completing a square. You can directly factorize. But sometimes you don't factorize. It comes in a factorized form. Like when you look at this one, it's already factorized. But if it doesn't come in a factorized form, the first thing that you're supposed to do is to make sure that it is in a standard form. Okay, it is equated to 0 and you factorize, and then you take it from this point. So this one was very easy. Now, beside a question that will need you to directly factorize, you will also have a question that will actually say correct to 2 decimal places. Immediately when you see a question saying correct to 2 decimal places, the implication is you should actually use a quadratic formula. Or if you don't use a quadratic formula, you can complete a square, of which 98% of learners wouldn't want to complete a square, you know. So please, people, let's it's like when you're playing a snooker, you understand, you score the scoreable balls first. You understand, the easy balls that to score. So the easiest is to use the quadratic formula. Don't become a champ and say I'm going to use I'm going to complete a square when you know very well that you might go wrong in completing a square. Okay, people, my advice to you is use a quadratic formula. As long as you see a question saying correct to 2 decimal places, you must actually use the quadratic formula. Okay. Now the quadratic formula is known to us as x is equals to minus b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2, of which this formulae in grade 12 are actually given in the formula sheet. Okay, but it's advisable for a mathematician to know these formulas by heart or by any part of the body that will help you remember these formulas. Okay, right, that is another type of a question that you'll actually get. Besides the factorizing directly or using the quadratic formula, you will also get a question of this nature, the 1.1.3. But before I actually look at 1.1.3, remember, you cannot use the quadratic formula. This formula, you cannot use it unless your equation is first in the standard form. It means your equation must be written in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c, so that you can easily identify the a, the b, and the c. Why are we identifying the a, the b, and the c? Because the quadratic formula is characterized by these variables. Okay, it is characterized by A, B, and C. So if you don't know the value of A, you don't know the value of B and C, then it means you can't use the quadratic formula. And the mistake that most of the learners are actually making in this type of question is that if C is equals to -2, you mustn't just focus on a number. You take a number together with a sign. You understand? Like in this case, the mistake that a learner will actually make is it's saying C is equals to 2, of which C is -2. So you take the coefficient of the variable with the sign, or you take the constant with the sign. Okay, so do not forget to the sign is very significant in this regard. Okay. Sorry. Now let's continue. You see the B's that you see here, that is why I'm using different colors so that you understand. The B is green, so it means where you see green, that is where you're going to substitute your 3. Where you see the blue, that is where you're going to substitute your C, which is your -2. And then where you see your ace, that is where you're going to substitute with red. Okay. Now another type which normally carries a lot of marks, it's this type of a question. Okay. When you look at this type of a question, it immediately, when you see the radical sign in this case is a square root. Okay, when you see the radical sign, you know you are actually going to square both sides, because we normally don't solve equations that contain radical signs. So if you have a radical sign, whether it's a square root, a cube root, so on and so on, so it means in this case, because it's a square root, we'll actually complete both sides. We will square both sides. If it was a cube root, we'll cube both sides. Okay. Right. Now another type of a question that we'll actually get in question 1 is this type of a question, where you see you don't have an equal sign, and if it is not equal sign, it means it's inequality. So the inequality can be greater than, it can be greater than or equals to, it can be less than, it can be less than or equals to. So this type of a question is actually an inequality. So we'll also be looking into that. You do not solve inequalities like equations, but you use principles of equations to solve inequalities. That is what you should actually put in mind, okay? But we're still coming into that one. And just look at it. This is already 4 marks, okay? And the reason why I'm actually starting with this question 1, is because it carries a lot of marks. So by default, if you actually write a paper, and then you get 20 out of 150, you get 24 marks, you are nearly closer to passing the exam question. Okay, so this is a major percentage of the question paper. All right. Now another question that you will actually get, like for an example, sometimes if you don't get a question that says that contains square roots, it means you will actually get exponents. So you should also revise your exponents. Okay. But in this video, I will only focus on the questions that are stated here. All right. Now, another type of a question that will always be there is this type of a question, where you are supposed to solve equations at the same time. Okay, you solve them simultaneously. And Afrikaans on says self-tertied. It means simultaneous. It means you solve these equations at the same time. Okay, so when we say at the same time, what do we mean? We mean simultaneously. You solve for 2 variables. You must find the values of x and the values of y. So by getting the values of y doesn't mean you are done with the question. By getting the values of x, it does, but you need to get both of them. That is why we are saying and. So these 2 variables are supposed to be satisfied, all of them. If you say no, I've actually answered the question thoroughly. Okay, and this is a question that contains almost many marks in question 1. All right. Now another question will be a question that will actually talk about roots. You remember your roots can either be equal. If they are not equal, they are non-real, and if they are not rational, they will be irrational, so on and so on. Okay, but now what is it that determines the roots of an equation? Okay, so it means when you say roots and you say equal, you are giving us the nature. Their nature is the roots are equal. Okay, that is why when you say roots and their nature, then you know you're talking about nature of the roots. But nature of the roots are characterized by this section in the radical sign. Because when you look at this is actually a quadratic formula, okay? This is your b, this is your b, this is your ac, blah blah blah, and this is your denominator 2 multiplied by a. Already it is solved, okay? So but the only thing that will actually give you the nature of the roots is what you find inside the radical sign, okay? And whatever you find in the radical sign, it's what is called the discriminant. You remember that. And the formula for the discriminant is given by discriminant, or delta, is equals to b squared minus 4ac. Okay. Now people, after actually looking at the dynamics of question 1, then we are ready to start solving these questions. Okay. So now let's move on. This question, like I've indicated, look at the marks. You look at all these marks, all of them. This is equals to 24 marks. It is important, people, that we go through this revision thoroughly. Okay. Some of the skills I will assume your teachers have already taught you, and then that is why I call it revision, because I'm not actually teaching here, but actually I'm revising with you. Okay. Right. Let's go on. Now let's look at the first question, which says solve for x, and then we're going to factorize, remember. Okay, then this is a direct factorization. Like I've indicated, this is already in the factor form. So it means here we're going to use the multiplication zero property, or the property of 0, to say if you multiply anything by 0, it will give you 0. So it means for this equation to be valid, one of the factors is supposed to be 0. Either x plus 7 must be 0, or 2x minus 3 must be 0. Okay. So directly, we can easily say 2x, the first factor, is equals to 0, or the second factor is equals to 0. Okay. Then from there, what are you going to do? You will actually add the additive inverse, or in simple language, you just say you take your constant numbers, you take them to the other side. And by default, when you take a number to the other side of the equal sign, then it changes the sign. Okay. So it means our final solution would actually take minus 3 to the other side, it becomes positive, then from there we divide by 2. Okay, so it means our final solution will be x is equals to, don't make a mistake, this is not minus, because minus 3 to the other side is positive. From there you divide by 2, then you remain with 3 divided by 2, or x is equals to minus 7. I always like to indicate how this will be marked at the end of the year. Okay, so let's check. If this is the final year examination question paper, okay, after writing the roots, or the values of x, or your solution, then this is how it's going to be marked. You'll get a mark for the first root, or for the first value of x, and then you also get a mark for the second one. Then how much are you going to get for this question? You'll actually get your 2 marks. People, 2 marks is a lot. 2 marks can either make you get a level 7 or remain in a level 6. So do not play with marks. Anything that is greater than 0.1 it's a lot. So it means when you say 1 mark is not just 1, it's a lot. When you say 2, it's even more, it's even furthermore than 1. Okay, so all these marks are necessary. Don't make a mistake of actual. And like I've always indicated, please, when you solve problems, relax. Okay, and then you must be sober. Then everything will be fine. Okay, right, I hope you understand this one. Then let's move on to the next question. We are still solving for x. Okay, so in the next, we are saying you are solving for x, but your answer must be correct to 2 decimal places. And I said immediately when you see 2 decimal places, it means you are actually going to use the quadratic formula. So this is your equation, and people, you should know the value of a, the value of b, the value of c. The value of a is the coefficient of x squared when the equation is in a standard form. It must first be in a standard form. So if it is not in a standard form, write it in a standard form. And in a standard form, it means it will be ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So in this case, it means our a is 7, our b is 3, and our c is minus 2, not 2. Be careful. Okay. Now, in solving this one, you write down the quadratic formula, and then where you see the blue, where you see your b, then you substitute with 3. And do not make a mistake, people. The mistakes that learners will actually do in this type of a question, or that you will do as a learner, is when you write your radical sign, or when you write your square root, you just write, a square root. I don't know, it's like you are allergic to square roots. You just write a short square root that will only cover b squared. No. The square root must cover everything. It must cover the discriminant, the whole discriminant. Okay, this is what defines the nature of the roots. All right, and your division line must divide everything. It mustn't just divide minus b, it must divide everything. So it's the numerator whole divided by 2a. Be careful. Okay, and then when you substitute, because that is the first mark that you're going to get, when you substitute, put your variables. Okay, put your variables, put this parameter 7, 3, and 2, put them inside the brackets. Okay, right, so it means in your second step will be minus, this is the minus for the formula, you put your b inside the bracket. Okay, whether it is positive or negative, it doesn't matter, but always learn to put it inside the brackets. It is important. Then plus or minus, and then square root of where you see b, you put a 3, where you see a, you put a 7, where you see a c, you put minus 2. Okay, and then your a again is 7. Right, another thing that you must also put into consideration, don't move directly to the final answer from this. Okay, firstly, let's remove these brackets. Bottomers, we can't just leave, we must remove the brackets. Okay, so it means when you remove the brackets, then you will remain with okay, negative multiplied by positive 3, it will remain negative 3, plus or minus. Then 3 squared is 9. Okay, negative multiplied by negative, then that will be positive. And then here you actually have your 4 multiplied by 7, 28, 28 times 2, which is equals to 56, 56 plus 9, then you remain with 60, 65. And in the denominator, you have your 2 times 7, which is 14. Then now you can actually use a calculator. But remember, you must round off your answer to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places, it means you must actually have 2 numbers after the comma. Okay, so it means that the second number is characterized by the third number. If the third number is greater than 4, then it will add 1 to the second number. Okay, so you use your calculator there, and then if your calculator is working properly and you are able to use it and it's in a correct mode, it will actually give you x is equals to 0.36 or x is equals to minus 0.79. And then likewise, this is how it's going to be marked. You'll actually get the first mark for substituting into the correct formula and substituting correctly. And substituting correctly means what? It means you put everything inside the brackets. Okay, you get a mark for that. You also get a mark for the value of x, the first value of x rounded off correctly to 2 decimal places. And you also get a mark for the value of x rounded off correctly to decimal places. And then by default, it means you'll actually get 3 marks for this type of a question. Okay, let's move on. Now, in the next one, we are still solving for x, but in this case, the skill that we are actually testing is squaring both sides. Okay, so now you have your equation. So when you square both sides, people, make sure that you separate the term that actually has the square root and terms that don't have the square root. So in this case, you make sure that you make a term that has the square root the subject of the formula. When I'm saying the subject of the formula, I mean it must remain alone on one side. So in this case, we'll actually make sure that the square root of x minus 1 remains alone on the left-hand side. Okay, so let's take 3 to the other side, and then it will actually be minus 3. So you remain with x minus 1 is equals to x minus 3. Then what is left now? When we say you square both sides, it means you put everything inside the bracket and then you square it. But whatever you do on the left-hand side, this is a mistake that learners do. You only square the left-hand side, or you only square the right. You must square both of them. That is why it's squaring both sides. Okay. Now you'll actually have x minus 1, and then square root of x minus 1 whole squared is equals to x minus 1 whole squared. You see, but the square root and the square. Remember, let's review. Remember, if you have the square root of a whole exponent 2, so it means it's square root of a squared. So the square and the radical, the square root and the 2 will actually eliminate one another. Okay, they eliminate one another. So in this case, you will remain with a. So the same thing apply here. It means instead of actually the square root and the 2 will eliminate one another, and then you will remain with x minus 1 is equals to x minus 3 whole squared. Then from here we can remove the brackets. Okay, So removing the brackets here is very simple. Remember, people, I don't want us to be wasting time with, yes, it is true that x minus 3 whole squared is the same as x minus 3 into x minus 3, but you must learn the quicker way of actually removing the brackets, okay? And the quicker way is x squared, that is what we are having as the first term, and the last term will be negative squared, which is positive, and then 3 times 3, or 3 squared, it's 9. Okay, right, how do you get the middle term? You multiply everything. 2 times x times minus 3. So it's positive, positive, negative, it will give you negative. You get my point. So 2 times x times 3 is 2 times x times negative 3, it will be minus 6x. That is how you will actually remove the brackets. I'm repeating this thing. Okay, so you have x minus 3 whole squared. It is x squared, that is the first term. Negative squared, it's positive. 3 times 3, it's 9 because it's 3 squared. How do you get the middle term? Is 2 times x times minus 3. You multiply everything, then you get minus 6x. Okay. Then from there, we can easily write it in the standard form. Okay. So when you write it in the standard form, when you take x to the other side, it will be minus 6x minus x is minus 7. And then it will be 9 plus 1, which is 10, which is equal to 0. So automatically it is in the standard form. Okay, you get a mark for that. Now we can easily factorize. Okay, so we are looking at what? We are looking at factors of 10, positive 10. When you add them, they give you minus 7. When you multiply them, they give you positive 10. I cannot go much into factorization. That is what you did with your teachers. Okay, but the factors here will be x minus 5 into x minus 2. Therefore, it means x is equals to 5, or x is equals, x minus 5 is equals to 0, or x minus 2 is equals to 0. Therefore, x is equals to 5, or x is not, be careful, this is the tricky part of squaring both sides, x is not equals to 2. Why are we saying that x is not equals to 2? Because after finding the roots, what you are supposed to do is you take these values of x, you substitute them back into the original equation. Okay, we will start with x is equals to 2. Okay, let's check. When x is equals to 2, it means where you see x, you will actually put a 2. And a 2 minus 1, it's 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 1 plus 3 will actually give you 4. And then when you say 4 is equals to 2, this is not valid. It's invalid. Therefore, it means when x is equals to 2, the equation is invalid. And if it is invalid, it means x cannot be equals to 2. Okay, hence, that is why you are having this x is not equals to 2. It's a verification. Okay, now let's check if this equal sign is also correct. Then for 5, you will also do the same. Where you see x, you put what? A 5. 5 minus 1 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Therefore, it means 5 is equals to 5. And this is valid. Therefore, that is why we are saying x is equals to 5. It's a solution. So you mustn't just write x is equals to 5 or x is equals to 2. You must verify, you must check. Okay, you must check by substituting these values of x into the original equation. Okay, please. Right, you get a mark for isolation, for isolating the square root term to other terms that don't contain the square root. You get a mark for squaring both sides. Okay, and then you also get a mark for standard equation or the standard form. You get a mark for the factors, for factorizing, and then you also get a mark for the first value of x, and for invalidating x is equals to 2, you also get a mark for that. So if you say x is equals to 2, you're going to lose this mark. So instead of actually getting the whole of 6 marks, you will actually remain with 5 marks because of not verifying. So make sure you verify. All right, that is the tricky part of the question. I hope you understand. Let's move on. Right, we're still in 1.1. Now we are solving for x, but now this is the inequality. So with inequalities, like I've indicated, you don't solve inequalities like equations, but you use principles of equations to solve inequalities. So why am I saying we are using principles of equations? If it was an equation, we must first write it in a standard form. Then that is exactly what we will do. Okay, but firstly, let's remove the brackets. Okay, you remove your brackets. 3 multiplied by x is 3x. 3 times or 3 multiplied by 6 is 18. Okay, so it means x squared is greater than 3x plus 18. And remember the property of inequality. If you divide throughout by a negative number or multiply throughout by a negative number, then the inequality must change. But in this case, we did not divide anything by a negative number. We did not multiply anything by a negative number. That is why the inequality remain intact. Okay. Now we write it in the standard form. Writing it in the standard form, it means everything must go to the other side, and the right hand side should be 0. So when you take 3x to the other side, it will be minus 3x. You take 18 to the other side, then it becomes minus 18, which is greater than 0. This is still a principle of equation, okay, but this is not an equation. All right, now we must factorize. We need factors of minus 18. When we add them, they give us minus 3, but when we multiply them, they give us minus 18. Hoping that you know how to factorize. I'll also do a video on factorization, okay. Now it means your factors will be x minus 6 into x plus 3 is greater than 0. Now we are still using the principle of equation, but this is not an equation. So if this was an equation, what were we going to say? We'll just say x minus 6 is greater than 0, or x plus 3 is greater than 0. It's wrong because this is not an equation. Okay, but instead, if it is an inequality, you must first find the critical values. But how do you find the critical values? When you find the critical values, you assume the inequality is actually an equal sign. So if this was an equal sign, then it means x will be equals to 6 or x is equals to 3. That is how you get your critical values. Therefore, you write it down. Critical values is actually, so these are the values that will actually help us to get the solution. That is why we're saying they are critical. Very important. Okay, when we say somebody is in a critical state, it means that particular person is in a very important stage of life, you know. Right, now let's check it. If x is equals to 6 or x is equals to minus 6, you check which one is small, okay? And by default, 6 is greater than minus 3, so you must start with minus 3. You just draw your number line, and then from there, you're going to determine. But before you draw your number line, you must make sure that you check your expression, your quadratic expression, okay? Your quadratic expression will be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Why should we actually check? Because we need to know whether our graph that is going to help us, a parabolic graph, if ever is going to be a smiley face, is going to have a minimum turning point, or is going to have a maximum turning point. Now, in this case, you check what determines that is the value of a, and it doesn't need a metric brain. You can see that our a here is 1 because you have nothing. If you have nothing here, it means it's 1. So 1 times, so my 1 here, it's positive. So your a is sometimes positive or it is negative, okay? And if it is positive, your graph will look up. It's a smiley face. It will smile at you. But if it is negative, then it will frown at you. It will be sad. You understand? So in this case, because our a is positive, it means when we draw our number line here to help us find the value, the solution, then it means it must actually look up because a is positive. You get my point? So the implication is, this is how we're going to get our solution. You just draw your number line here, then it must face up. Why is it facing up? Because a is positive. What is the value of a? The value of a is 1 here. It's positive 1. Okay? Then from there, you can easily write the critical values. So the first critical value, the smallest, is minus 3. The second one will be 6. But remember, when you say greater, as long as there is no equals to, whether it's greater than or is less than, as long as there is no equals to, it means these values are not, these critical values are not included. And if they are not included, you draw an open circle. If they were included, let's say for an example, it was greater than or equals to, then you would shade. This will be a shaded circle. This is also going to be a shaded circle. But now we want to determine where are we going to get our solution. Our solution is either is above the horizontal line or is below the horizontal line. And then when you say greater than 0, it means above. Okay? It means above is the value of y above the x. But if you say less than, then it will be below. So in this case, it means our solution will be above. And above is where you get your arrows. So every time if your solution is on the side where you have arrows, it means your answer is going to be or. But if your answer is on the side that doesn't have arrows, it means it is going to be and. It means x is going to lie between the two. So in this case, because it's greater than 0, our solution is on the side with arrows. Therefore, it means our solution will actually be in that direction. Because of this greater than, then this is how our solution is. So anything less than minus 3 and anything greater than 6. Therefore, it means x is less than minus 3. Or, why is it or? Because our solution is on the side where you have the arrows, okay? It's on the open side of your parabola, okay? And this is how you're going to get your marks. The first mark will be for writing it in a standard form. You get a mark for factorization. You get a mark for critical for the first solution, and then you also get a mark for the second solution. Okay, so even if you don't write it like this, you leave it like this, you'll still get your full marks because you will get a mark for this part. This part is the same as x is less than minus 3. And this part, the circle, the arrow, and the 6 is the same as x is greater than 6. Then you will actually get your 4 marks, which is a lot. Okay. I hope you understand. Let's move on. Now let's look at a question where you are solving for x and y simultaneously. You are given, the first thing that you are supposed to do is to actually label these equations. So you will call this equation number 1, and then you have the second one, you also call it equation number 2. Remember, something that will actually differentiate a grade 11 learner to a grade 10 learner is that in grade 10, the equations that are given to you, they are all linear. But immediately when you do grade 11 and 12, you will have a linear equation and a quadratic equation. Okay, so in this case, the linear equation is the one that will actually help us to get equation number 3. Okay, so when the same way that you are saying from equation number 1, what are you going to do? You write it down. Okay, from equation number 1, you check which variable has the coefficient of 1. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be easy for you to make x the subject of the formula because the coefficient of x is 1. But you can still make 2y the subject of the formula, but it's gonna be complicated. Okay, you can go that route if you really understand what you're doing. But in this case, we'll actually make x the subject of the formula. Then you remain with, you write it down from equation number 1 because we need to know where did you get this equation. You actually got this equation from equation number 1. You made x the subject of the formula from equation number 1. Okay, which is equals to 1, you take 2y to the other side, it becomes minus, and you label it to say this is equation number 3. Why are you labeling it? Because this equation number 3 is the one that we're going to substitute in equation number 2 to make sure that we have the y variable equation. We have an equation with only one variable. So in this case, it means we're going to take this equation 3, we substitute in equation number 2. Where we see x, we just put 1 minus 2y. Okay, so you substitute equation number 3 in equation number 2. Then where you see x, you just put 1 minus 2y, and then your square is your square here. Y squared is y squared. 3, where you see x. So 3xy is the same as 3yx. So multiplication is commutative. The order doesn't matter. 3 times 4 and 4 times 3 is the same thing. So for it to be logical, you can just say 3yx. Okay, or you can still say 3 into blah, it doesn't matter, but this is 3yx. So it will be 3y, where you see x, you put 1 minus 2y, plus y is equals to 0. Okay, then we will remove the brackets the same way. Remember, 1 squared, it's 1. Negative squared, it's positive for the last one. 2 squared is 4. Remember, the square is for both of them. 2 squared is 4, and then y squared. And the middle term will be 2 times 1 multiplied by minus 2y. Okay, that is how you'll remove your bracket. So you remain with 1 minus 4y, okay, plus 2 squared is 4, and then y squared, okay, plus y squared, and then 3y multiplied by 1 is 3y, and then 3y multiplied by 2y is minus, is positive multiplied by negative. That will be minus 6y squared plus y is equals to 0. Then from there you can group like terms, okay. 4y squared plus y squared is 5y squared. 5y squared minus 6y squared, it will be minus y squared. Okay, and then minus 4y, remember 3y plus y is 4y, and then 4y minus, so the y's will be out, so minus 4y plus 4y is 0. Okay, and then you remain with 1 minus y squared is equals to 0. So when you have it in this form, you can actually solve it in 2 ways, which I'm going to use in this video. Firstly, we can take minus 2y squared to the other side, and then you remain with y squared is equals to 1. And remember, to remove the square on the left hand side, you introduce the square root both sides. Okay, But remember, a square root is an approximation. Therefore, you must write it plus or minus. So it means our y is equals to plus or minus square root of 1. And square root of 1 is equals to 1. Therefore, it means y. Because if you don't write plus or minus square root of 1, it means you're going to have only one value. And remember, this, the square that you see here, indicate how many values of y you are supposed to get. If it was 3 cubed, you have 3 values of y. If it is y squared, it's 2 values. If it is just y, you have only one value of y. So in this case, we'll have plus or minus square root of 1, which will be plus or minus 1. But if you don't want to solve it in this way, you can easily factorize here, because this 1 is the same as 1 squared, okay? This is the difference of 2 squares. Then you can actually factorize. 1 minus y squared, it will be 1 minus y into 1 minus y into 1 plus y, which is equals to 0. Therefore, it means your x will be equals to 1, or x is equals to minus 1, which is the same as what you are having here. Okay. All right, continue with our solution. We'll actually substitute. You take the values of y. The first value of y, which is 1, you substitute it. Where you see 1 in the third equation. Why are we using the third equation? Because x is already the subject of the formula. But you can substitute this one anywhere, whether in 1, 2, 3. But why complicate uncomplicated equation? The uncomplicated equation is the one that we are having here, because x is already the subject of the formula. So where you see y, you put 1, and then you play your maths here, okay? You can use your calculator, then your y will be minus 1. The implication is when x is 1, y is equals to minus 1. All right. So when y is minus 1, what will happen? When y is equals to minus 1, then it means x will be 3. Okay. So remember, when you say you are solving for x and y, you are trying to say, if you draw the equations of the two, okay, the linear equation and this one, if you draw them together, they will intersect, okay, at 2 points. And what are those points? The first point is 1 and minus 1. The second point is minus 1 and 3. So the values that you get here, these are point of intersections of the first graph and the second graph, or the first function and the second function. That is why we are saying you are solving them simultaneously. Okay. How hard is that? Very simple. Okay. Now let's move on to, okay, before we move on, let's mark it. You get a mark for making one variable the subject of the formula. In this case is x. You can still make y the subject of the formula. From there you get a mark for substituting correctly whatever variable that you made the subject of the formula. You get a mark for writing the equation in a standard form, okay, in a particular variable. So it might be the y variable. If you actually make y the subject of the formula, then you will have an x variable equation. So it means instead of actually getting the value of y first, you will get the value of x first. Okay. And then for writing in the standard form, and then from there you also get a mark for factorization if it was in a factor form. But in this case, you'll get a mark for getting, when you say y is equals to plus or minus 1, these are the values of y. So you get a mark for the values of y. You also get a mark for the values of x. Okay. Then you also get a mark for your factorization. So this will substitute factorization. So whoever is following the factoring method here, then you get this mark for factorization. Okay. Then from there, this will be for the values of y, and this will be for the values of x. Then that is how you get your 6 marks. All right. Now let's move on to the last question. Nature of the roots. We are looking at the nature of the roots. Remember, roots are x values in a quadratic equation. Okay. And a quadratic equation will be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. Right, so in this case, the question says, I'm putting it here so that we remember, if f of x is equals to 0, it means f of x is the function, is the quadratic function. It is equals to 0. This statement is telling us that the function, the equation is in the standard form. Okay, we don't know what is f of x, but we know this is a quadratic expression. So this this quadratic function is equals to 0. And if the quadratic function is equals to 0, it means it's in a standard form. That is why we are able to use the quadratic formula. So if you use the quadratic formula on that function that we don't know, and then this is how you're going to get the values of x. The values of x are given by -5 plus or minus. So this is after substitution and removing the brackets. Okay, so the question says, for which values of k will the roots be equal? Firstly, for roots to be equal, it means the discriminant. Discriminant, remember, discriminant must be equals to 0, and discriminant is given by b squared minus 4ac is equals to 0. Okay, these are equal roots. You write it for equal roots, then the discriminant. And remember, for non-real roots, the discriminant is less than 0. It must be less than 0. By the way, how do you determine the discriminant? The discriminant is what you find inside the radical sign. Okay, so this part, b squared minus 4ac, is represented by 3 minus 12k squared. So this part is the one that is going to give us the nature of the roots. Okay, and then this part must be equals to what? It must be equals to 0. So instead of b squared minus, so where we see this discriminant, we substitute b squared minus 4ac with what? 3 minus 12k squared. Then you remain with 3 minus 12k squared is equals to 0. Is equals to 0 because the roots are equal. They're supposed to be equal. Okay, then from there you can take actually 12k to the other side. Then you remain with 12k squared is equals to minus 3. Or if you don't want to take 12k to the other side, you can take 3 to the other side. Then you have minus 12k is equals to minus 3. Then you will divide by -3 throughout. Okay, then your k will be equals to, k squared will be equals to 3 divided by 12. An equivalent fraction of 3 divided by 12, it's 1 divided by 4, because the biggest number that can divide in both of them and leave a remainder of 0 is 3. Okay, 3 divided by 3 is 1, 12 divided by 3 is 4. So it means k squared is equals to 1 divided by 4. But now we want to remove what? The square on the left hand side. And remember, removing the square on the left hand side, it means you are introducing the square root. And the square root, it's an approximation. Therefore, you must write plus or minus next to it. Therefore, we have k is equals to plus or minus square root of 1 divided by 4. And remember, according to laws of exponents, the square root of a divided by b is the same as the square root of the numerator divided. So the square root it's for both of them. So this square root is for the numerator and is also for the denominator. Therefore, square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2. You can use a calculator as well. Then it means our answer will be, therefore, k is equals to plus or minus half. So these are the two solutions. Okay, so it means this function will actually have roots that are equal if our k here, if we can substitute k with positive half or minus half, then the roots are going to be equal. Okay, it means when you say roots are going to be equal, it means x will be equals to 2 or x is equals to 2. So the roots will be the same. Okay, and then what is the implication? What do you mean when you say k is equals to plus or minus half? We are having two solutions here if you're not aware. Okay, k is equals to plus or minus half. It means k is equals to half, or k is equals to minus half. Okay, how hard is that? Very, very simple. So whatever you see in the radical sign is your discriminant, and then it's the one that will actually determine the nature of the root. So revise. Remember, when will roots be equal? When will roots be unequal? When will roots be rational, irrational? When will roots be non-real? So on and so on. Okay, right, this is how we'll mark it. We give you a mark for the condition, for knowing that the discriminant must be equal to 0 because roots are equal. And then you also get a mark for simplification, for k squared is equals to 1 divided by 4. And then you get a mark for the final answer, for both answers. Okay, for plus or minus 1 divided by 2. All right, and this is your 3 marks. Remember, this is 24 marks in total, which is a lot. Okay, 24 marks, people, it's a lot. Let me emphasize this. This is a lot. It is a lot of marks. All right, I hope you understand, and I'm happy for you. Okay. So people, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my video, and yeah, share with your family members. Subscribe, like, and hit that notification button so that you are actually notified of my future videos. And thank you very much for helping me reach more than 100 subscribers. Let's move on to 200, 500,000 until we reach millions of South Africans. I will actually leave the link below for videos concerning analytical geometry, so that whoever hasn't seen the analytical geometry videos can also use them for revision. So I'll be uploading other videos for revision purposes. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching, and God bless. Okay.